Have Mark's ear.
Oh, you're.
No, his belly.
And he's done.
Pink shirt, pink t-shirt.
Okay, good to go.
All right, well, I will call the meeting to order and get to our one agenda item, which is, if you only have one agenda item, you might as well make it a big one. But review of proposed local law amending the Irvington zoning code to create the multi-family office district and related environmental assessment form. And I think with that, are we going to turn it right over to Mary Ann? And
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll start going through the law itself and try to address some of the questions that have come up.
Do you want to go through the law or do you want to, go through that outline I sent?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which,
Yep.
because I don't think that we have to go through, all the little changes in the law, that they were made as we went along, couple, Chet Kerr asked for a couple language clarifications, those things were made, you'll see them in the next draft. But one thing that came out in the last round, actually it's come out before, is could this be read to require permit a density bonus for an all affordable in order for all affordable project? Well, if I wanted to read it pretty aggressively, I could say, it could be read that way. But I think we could clarify it and make it not only make it clearer to who's ever enforcing this law, but also make it clearer to to developers, because they're not gonna, get into the interpretation. So Larry, do you have the outline, because I had language in there. Larry, you're on mute.
Just hold on one second. I just have to get things aligned here so you can see.
Okay, while he's getting it, what this section is about is adding a provision that provides for a density bonus for an all affordable housing development. So Larry put the language up there pretty much. Okay. It's just that A and B. And any permitted 3 or more family dwelling in which all of the dwelling units are fair and affordable housing units, as defined in 224-173 refers to the affordable housing section of the code. A developer shall be allowed to exceed the maximum number of dwelling units otherwise permitted by the zoning code, but in no event by more than 20%, provided that all of the additional units are also fair and affordable housing units, meeting all the requirements of Article 28, fair and affordable housing of the zoning code, and B, that this density bonus shall not apply to senior citizen housing. I'm assuming, you wouldn't on the affordable, we talked about this before, about the moderate income density bonus applying to senior housing. And I think we decided no, because then you're getting into density that's too high, because with the senior, you can already have 50% more than what would be the regular site capacity. So if the board agrees, that they want this provision, I can insert it.
Well, I think that was our intention in the first place. I think everyone would agree to that.
Wait, I just had a question to Mary Ann. I know we're not going back through the law itself, but is there a similar for the moderate income density? It would be now matching what this language is here, so that they would have the same.
Yes, I'll read you that it's actually I made the language parallel. Hold on a minute. Okay, this is the density bonus for moderate income units. In any permitted 3 or more family dwelling, except not in senior citizen housing, a developer shall be allowed to exceed the maximum number of dwelling units otherwise permitted by the zoning code, but in no event by more than 20% if for every market rate unit in excess of the maximum, the developer builds one moderate income unit affordable to whatever. So it had to be changed to, somewhat, but pretty much it parallels that. And I put the density bonus shall not apply to in a separate provision, because when you put it in the same, and when you put it in A, it was too hard to tell what phrase was modifying what, so. But
Okay,
anyway, yes, it's parallel provision, Connie.
okay, thank you.
So I had one question, Marianne, and that is, of the 20% bonus, are we, is anything specifying what the percentage mix of units, 1, 2, or 3 bedroom? Or is that just left up to, I don't even recall exactly what it's left up to in the Affordable Housing Code.
Wait, hold on, let me get there. I think it hit, let me read the affordable housing section on there. Okay, within multifamily developments, the fair and affordable housing units shall be physically integrated into the design of the development and shall be distributed among various sizes in the same proportion as all other units in the development. Well, so that would
So
cover
that's what it
that.
says it, yeah.
It says, provided all of them meet the requirements of Article 28, and that's in Article 28, so.
Okay, thank you.
My only question on what's in front of us right now is if it was an all affordable senior housing, would we feel differently? Because like they're talking to West Hab and places like that, they do have a bunch of affordable for seniors. And would this preclude it if they wanted to say, oh, if someone wanted to have it all affordable, but for seniors? This seems like I'm not sure how it would work, because it would be, affordable, but it wouldn't. I guess they wouldn't get it because they'd be senior housing, right?
Right, but they're
Well, they
already getting
wouldn't
a
get
density
it, but I
bonus.
mean, if you took that provision out, they could, I mean.
But the bonus on the senior housing side is considerably larger anyway, already, so.
Right.
True. Okay, maybe we don't need it then.
So in other words, in your hypothetical, Brian, the developer could say, this is senior housing, as opposed to saying, this is an all affordable housing. It just would be affordable.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if they said it's going to be all affordable, but it's going to be, it's going to be 55 plus or 60 plus or whatever, all affordable.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
guess.
then they get the senior citizen density bonus, which is bigger than all of this
So that's what
to
I'm
begin
saying.
with.
You would likely go in and call it senior.
Yeah, because if, let's say it would be you'd have, ordinarily you'd have 60. And then if they're senior, you could have 90. And so you're more likely, but what would happen is if you also gave a density bonus for the senior citizen, then it's 160 and 12, then it's 102, right?
Yeah, no, that's
90,
fine. You don't need to
12.
double it up then. As long as you're right. I forgot that we had the separate senior provision there.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
trumps it.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll put that in. All right, then the next change, Larry, put number 2 on. This was something that Rose Noonan brought to our attention, and it's a good change. I don't think it's controversial. In our affordable housing law, when you're talking about rental income, rental units, talk about 80% of the 80% of the AMI doesn't exceed 30% of said income. For purchase, it's whatever your number is, 80%, 60%, doesn't exceed 33%. The percentage is lower on the rentals. So I think the provision should be parallel. So I would change the 33 to 30, which is one of her suggestions. If everybody agrees.
Fine. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, then the next one, Larry, 3. Yeah, Rose raised this point, and it's really peculiar. Under the, if you look to the exceptions of the Fair Housing Act, there can be an exception for senior citizen housing if there's at least one adult of 55. That's one way you can meet the exemption. Or you can meet the exemption if everybody's over 62.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But I remember in law school, I asked my professor in my tax class, I said, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. If this, why not this? And he said to the class, what's the problem? What's the problem in her question? And nobody knew. And he said, you're assuming it makes sense, you know? And this doesn't make too much sense, but we want to make that we want to make it fit the exception of the Fair and Affordable Housing Act. And I assume you would your choice is to either say one adult has to be 55 and the other one could be whatever age, or everybody has to be 62. You could do one or the other. I assumed you prefer this one, but
I think I prefer this.
Larry, Mark.
I'm not sure I prefer this, because this one adult age 55 means the other adults there can be adult children living with people, there can be,
Right.
you know, and I'm not sure it meets the need for senior housing, which is a huge need in the county. On the other hand, I get the problem with everybody has to be 62. Suppose somebody,
Yeah.
it's just, but certainly.
If somebody was lucky enough to get a spouse 20 years younger than that, you know, it shouldn't be kept out.
If those are our choices, I guess I would go with at least 155 plus.
Yeah, I think the way we had it drafted was better, but Rose brought that up, and I checked the Fair Housing Act, and you know, not that I needed to check on Rose, but to see exactly how it read, and that's right. So, okay, should I make that change?
Okay.
Well, hold on for just 1 second. What was the current language? Was that everyone had to be over 62?
No, one person had
Oh,
to be
one
over
adult.
62.
So we could still have like a young couple with kids cohabitating with the parent.
Yeah,
As long as one is,
and then one person has to, you have a 155-year-old who's even married to a 35-year-old and have a whole family. I mean, you know, that's going to happen, but it could happen.
Well,
But the same thing could happen with 62.
yeah, exactly. So all we're doing is really making it more accessible to people.
It's more accessible, yeah, although not as targeted to you know, seniors, but I mean, or the other thing you could do, which I really wouldn't recommend because it makes the zoning code hard, is it at some point, oops, I have scenario rather than senior. If at some point, you know, if they change the Fair Housing Act, you know, to maybe make a little more sense, or maybe even increase the ages or whatever, so you could say it's senior citizen housing, you know, age restricted housing as permitted by the Fair Housing Act. But I don't really like references to other laws in a situation like this. You know, sometimes it makes sense, but.
Thank you, Larry.
Didn't want to
Believe
cause
this
any trouble.
speech. What?
I fixed the spelling mistake, so
Oh, thanks. Okay.
Mark was thanking me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know how the hell I managed that. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so then these were some other issues raised, and there might be a couple of others. I got emails from a couple of trustees about other things, but let's start with these. Requiring LEED silver requirements. You guys have been talking about that, so.
I think it's important to have energy efficient building. My problem is, why are we specifying this? I mean, if this is what other people have said, that it's a requirement of getting funding for affordable housing, with the big A, then it's a requirement of the builder. It doesn't necessarily have to be a requirement in our code. I'm much more concerned about getting energy efficiency throughout the village rather than just piling what is usually considered to be a more cumbersome process on top of these projects. But like I
The only
said,
thing is, Mark, it's you're right about affordable housing generally requires it, but if somebody's building something that's not affordable, or they're not getting funding from the for their affordable housing thing, then it wouldn't. But I mean, I think there's been general discussion of applying the enacting the New York stretch code to the village, because this certainly makes, and that would cover that. I've read, about trying to see the difference between the New York stretch and lead silver. But anyway, the New York stretch one, first of all, we have a new building code that requires more energy efficiency, a state building code, and then stretch brings it even farther. And something like that probably makes sense, but I agree with Mark that should be done village wide.
well, I guess my only concern is if it happens, later, or too much later after projects first start. So, I guess it would be come up to us, up to the board, to ensure that a stretch code got adopted fairly quickly.
So from a timing standpoint, you had a presentation back in December. It was a little technical, so it was I think we probably have to learn a little bit more about it in an easier format. But my intention, you're the ones who have the priorities, but my intention was to put this in front of you when you get some of these larger items off your plate. And I think this summer is actually a good time to start looking at that. So I don't think we're that far off, and with as I've said to you before, the building department is prepared for the New York stretch code. They're trained in it. They are expecting it to be adopted. It just takes time to integrate it, and you need to, learn about it and understand what it's about. But I think that can be done this summer.
My fear is, we adopted whole, right? We don't have to. We adopt it by reference to the state code, or we don't. Do we have to embed everything into our code?
I don't
well,
know.
a little bit, it's sort of. My understanding, I only a little bit, is like when we adopted the New York State Building Code, and then there were other provisions. There were certain things that had to be written into our code, but they've got the model local provisions.
Yeah. Right.
Pardon? Yes.
Yeah, there's
yes.
a template. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's great. I personally think that this should be applied across, all zones and all types of housing and all types of development. Whether it's refurbishment or whether it's new housing. And so, to me, I would not want to put lead on top of residential housing. Standalone single family. I think, except for very high end. House development, that doesn't really cut it.
Well, I think, I agree with Mark, the village-wide approach. And if Larry, you think we can get that on an agenda, more or less ASAP, then I think that's a wise way to go.
So let me just ask one, it might be a silly hypothetical, but let's say that this gets passed, the MF code gets passed, zone code gets passed, let's say it gets passed in June or something. And then let's say someone comes in as a developer who has a project for one of the properties, and it happens to be a project that is maybe a moderate income, affordable with the little a, and yet we haven't passed our stretch code yet. So I'm just wondering about what do we do to ensure that, let's say the stretch code comes a few months later, how do we ensure there isn't a gap where someone can get away with not conforming to it? if you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, you can't.
No, I understand what you're saying, and it is a concern. Is there a way that the planning board would have some level of input or control, or the board of trustees reach out to the planning board about what their intentions are
Is it-
after the fact, after
Well,
the zoning is passed?
Remember that your code has a provision,
Right, yeah,
which actually I suggested adding, that was
Right,
about 10 years ago, that if there's a law pending, you, in the zoning code, there's essentially a de facto moratorium. You can't do anything that isn't in compliance with both that and the existing code. So, I mean, you don't have to have all, I mean, you couldn't say, oh, we're calling for a public hearing and then not do anything about it. It has to, it assumes you're moving along with your consideration. But once you call for a public hearing, but
Yeah.
and
I was gonna suggest that.
I would say that it's kind of maybe what that does is put pressure on you to enact the thing.
well,
Yeah,
or
I
at
think
least
that's
get it
good.
on-
I think that's good pressure.
Yeah,
to get it at least onto
Agreed.
the agenda, right, as an actual thing, rather than something we'll get to.
Yeah, but it's exactly because of that situation, Mark, that this, I call it a de facto moratorium was added to the code, because you don't want somebody to hear about, oh, they're gonna do this, I better get my application in, you
Wasn't
know?
this about the time the historic district was
I remember
or
this. Vaguely
demolition in the historic district? No.
Whatever it was, I vaguely remember it. So it's sometime.
But there's a 90-day window, is that correct, Marianne?
I don't know.
I think there's a window where
I
it has
might
to
say
be.
90 days, but it could probably be, be extended. I mean, and the other thing is you can always enact a moratorium, until it's done, but
All right.
I
so
mean, I'm
So
not
it-
recommending.
we
that,
basically have a
that's
couple
generally.
ways to keep a
But
safe.
the thing is, you guys have everything you need to pass this law. I mean, the state's almost handed it on a silver platter. So just, review it and consider it. And yeah, I think that's a good idea, Larry, that this summer, things usually slow down. It'd be a good time to consider it.
And to find someone that could give a better presentation than we were given back in December.
we
Because that
can.
was part of the problem, I think. Had the
Yeah.
presentation been clearer, we probably would have passed it sooner.
Well, we do have local architects who are LEED certified, and we have, Ed as being trained in the, and training others in the stretch code, right? So we have resources we could bring in if we needed to have a comparison, or if we just want to hear more about the stretch code, could we ask Ed to present to us?
I mean, all of that can happen. I'll formulate it to make sure that you first understand it, and then we're ready to, enact it if that's the way you want to go with it.
Right, but I'm comfortable with, as far as this line item is concerned, with what our decision is, that it'll be a village-wide decision as opposed to something added to the zoning rule.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I think that makes the most sense.
That's how I feel. I hope everyone else feels that way.
Well, do we need to do a poll?
I'd like to make it village-wide with the stretch code and pass it and not have it in here.
Agreed.
Okay.
Right?
All right, then the next one, this was a suggestion, I'm not sure who made it. It would have been the Housing Committee or Rose, for senior citizen housing to require more affordable units than the 10% set aside.
The more I thought about this one, the more it kind of made sense to me, just because we are allowing more units. So, to me, I wouldn't be opposed if we wanted to go. I think the highest I've seen in other codes is like 15%, right? So I don't know what others think about that, but I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea, especially because they're getting extra units.
Well, but those extra units don't they follow the same 1 out of 10 kind of thing? So if we
Yeah.
gave them 7 or 8 extra units, they would automatically have to make one of those.
One of them, yeah. The way I looked at it was if they get 6 or 7 extra units, if they have to make 2 then rather than 1 more, To me, they can make it up in volume, like the math seems to work better since we're giving them extra units anyway, that they can, it'd be easier for someone to absorb the extra cost of, having the affordables if they have extra units. So
I put in my notes leaning yes, so I guess I'm agreeing with you, Brian. So,
I'm sort of leaning that way too, even though I made the counter argument.
it's always good to talk through it.
Well, I have two questions. One, Marianne, it's okay for us to do that, to set a different affordable requirement than what we're setting for everything else in the village for the specific senior citizen portion of the zoning?
Offhand, I can't see that there'd be an issue with it, Larry.
Right. Okay. And the only other issue, it's not really an issue, but the comment I would make is, it's very difficult with seniors to know income for seniors, how they qualify. Lots of seniors' money is in other places. Lots of seniors' money is being held by children. Lots of seniors' money.
Or it's being, or they're getting paid from retirement plans. It's not fixed what you get.
Right. So I'm not sure. I don't know. That's just, I remember with my mom, trying to figure out what the income was. It's a little trickier. It's not like a regular family, income. And we are, trying to specifically, care for a population that is growing, in the village, growing in the county, and is in need of this kind of a service. But I'm just not sure how that gets defined in general. So, just a general comment there.
The affordability is something that would be outsourced. In a village our size, you would outsource that, the affordability administration of the whole thing. So the verification of income, verification of assets, and how all that plays into what their total income is that would, be used to measure. All of that would be outsourced, to a qualified organization like a Housing Action Council, and I'm sure there's others. So, that's not something we would need to do. So I certainly recognize that there are challenges, but there's people that we're going to pay or that the developer will pay to make sure that it happens and it happens correctly.
So my other comment would be, given that the senior project does have a significantly higher density, allowance, I'm certainly in favor of a larger than 10%, and I would even consider up to a 20% set aside if we think that that's something that still makes it an affordable project for an all affordable situation. An affordable situation at a market rate project.
So on the senior housing, we have no, in general, there's no income-based validation for senior housing. It's just age-based. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
But
The way it is now.
10% would need to be capital A affordable.
Except for the 10%, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
I meant that. But.
And the
Right.
need
So
for senior citizen
the question
housing.
here is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to comment that the need for senior housing is not just affordable. People need the railings and the access and the various things that go into making it senior accessible housing. That is a separate issue from income. So I wouldn't want to make it all affordable, but I would agree that we should increase the percentage of affordable.
Well, as long as we're not pricing ourselves.
if it came from Rose Noonan, then the administrative part of it, I think we could probably assume, as Larry is describing, could be taken care of, and there must be precedent for doing this, especially if it came from her suggestion. So, I'm certainly leaning stronger to doing that. I don't know if it's 10%.
I'm not sure it came from Rose or it might have come
From the housing committee.
The housing committee.
But in any, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's something that they can do.
Right.
There's,
Right. I don't think there's any question that Housing Action Council can handle it.
Okay.
There's only one question I have, and that's sort of back to what Brian and I were talking about at the very beginning, which is if we go to 15, that's one thing. If you go to 20% set aside, are you starting to then weigh against creating senior housing? I mean, I do know that there's, you've got density bonuses and all that, but at some point, the cost difference of having to support the affordable units is going to start weighing down on the entire endeavor.
Yeah, and the other thing, weighing toward the 15% would be, based on your question, Larry Lonke, is you said, is it justifiable when it's 10% every place else? Well, you could say, just like you're allowing 50% more units in the senior, we're going to require a 50% higher set aside. So it makes some sense, because 15 is 50% higher than the 10%.
Which gives a level of consistency.
Yeah.
I also don't know if I've seen higher than 15%.
Yeah, I haven't either, Brian. Yeah.
So,
All right, well,
So change the, okay, so yes, and make it 15%?
I'm good.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really only about 4 units different anyway, right? Between 15 and 20%. With 90 units, you're talking about 14 versus 18. So
good point.
But again, it's still, every one of those units is a cost drag on the overall project. So I think we're not clear enough about what those 4 extra units really mean in terms of profitability.
Yeah, but except that, I mean, I think we were okay on the profitability on the number of units. It seemed like it would work, the number of units in a just a regular multifamily. And then this is 50% more. That's a lot more. I mean, my guess is it's going to work. And again, just like you're giving them 50% more units, to require 50% more of a set aside seems to make sense. Okay.
So we're all yes on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what else, Mark, is hopefully the people that are thinking about the developers that are paying attention to this, and I understand there are some who are, will say something if it's an issue. So far, there have not been any comments that this isn't going to work. So okay, then the next one is either permitted density bonus for senior citizens. There was a suggestion that you permit the density bonus for senior citizen housing, which we did discuss and say, no, then it's just they're going to get to be too big. Or impose income limits. There was a suggestion that we impose income limits on the senior housing.
Why?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that was the,
We have a block of
you can
affordable.
go back to your correspondence.
to make
from
it
them.
more, right, to make it more small A affordable, I guess maybe,
Yeah.
similar to how we're looking for some moderate income units in the regular housing, maybe some moderate income units in the senior development as well. But
Let me
I
see
think,
if I
but
can
I think
find
by
the letter.
increasing the capitally affordable requirements, we're accomplishing a lot there.
yeah, I think so too. I think we kind of talked about, when I brought up the first part, and I think it was we don't need to. And then I think the second part, I think by, raising the other one to 15, I think we've accomplished a lot of it.
Right. I think these are 2 alternative provisions for how to accomplish this goal. And I think by raising the percentage to 15, we've done it.
I think it makes cleaner
Reasonable
code.
effort at doing it.
My comment to myself was lean no. So, okay, lean no, like no to that. So the 15 we've got on the set aside, and then this one will bypass.
Well, here's what was in the housing committee's letter. If senior only housing continues to be an acceptable use on the rezoned parcels, given that there are density bonuses and parking reductions as of right, we believe that there should be income restrictions incorporated for a certain number of units beyond the current 10% set-asides, which would ensure diversity of senior residents. And you've just done that by increasing it from 10 to 15%. Let me just see. Oh, wait, here's the one from Rose. Now Rose just said, why does the density bonus provision not apply to senior housing? So I think this addresses those concerns.
She had the same bad question I had.
Yeah. Okay, so.
Moving on.
All right, it says, okay, clarify how many affordable are required if the moderate and community density bonus applies. Rose said something about how that had to be clarified, but I looked at it, I think it's clear. It may be that she hasn't, you have to look at that in along with the affordable housing requirements, which aren't in there. But I put it up here for you to look at to see whether you think it's unclear. Okay, so in any permitted 3 or more family dwelling, except not in senior citizen housing, a developer shall be allowed to exceed the maximum number of dwelling units otherwise permitted by the zoning code, but in no event by more than 20%. If for every market rate unit in excess of the maximum, wow, that 13, the
Yeah.
developer builds. Larry, you want to fix it?
Right.
Is it bothering you that much?
Yeah, the developer builds one, I don't know how that got in there. The developer builds one moderate income unit affordable to a household whose income doesn't exceed 100% of AMI or 80% for rental. Okay. For example, if the permitted site capacity is 60, the developer may construct 12 additional units if 6 of the additional rental units are moderate income units. Okay. All right. Then with the
You've got
number of
double
additional.
Stop for a second. Larry, there's double fours. 100% 4.
Yeah.
No, 100% for,
No, we're
no,
good.
belongs there.
This is just a working document anyway.
I know, but anyway, it belongs there, 100% for 4 purchase units.
Oh, I had to.
Right,
It just needed it.
How's that?
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so with the number of additional units permitted by the density bonus is an odd number, the number of moderate income units must be rounded up. For example, if 5 additional units are permitted, 3 of them must be moderate income units. The additional units shall be included in the total number of units the additional units shall be included in the total number of units for purposes of calculating the number of fair and affordable dwelling units. So if you got up to 72 units, you have to provide 7 affordable.
Why wouldn't it be 8? Don't you round up? 7.2 would become 8?
Well, yeah, now wait a minute. Oh, you see, this is repeated. That should be 3. I'm sorry, when I was typing, it got messed up. That's on there twice. Okay. The additional units shall be included in the total number of units for purposes of calculating. You know, if 72 were permitted, 7 would have to be, you know what? I'm not sure how they're doing it, you know, on the rounding up, rounding down. I would say in the regular affordable housing law, I mean,
I sort of, let's take a real example. If 60 is a real number for say the Maxon property,
yeah.
and we're really talking about what I'd like to really understand and be able to explain that. So that's why my question is, would 7 be affordable or would 8 be affordable?
Yeah, well, I mean,
If that would gain an additional, unit, and there would be 1 less market rate unit.
right. So I think that's a fair way to read it. Often, when I've seen this interpreted, if it was 72, you say 10% is 7, but under our code, it says no less than 10% should be affordable. So I guess it probably should be 8. So then 8 would have to be affordable, and there'd be 58 market rate unit, 58 market rates, 6 moderate income and 8 affordable.
Right, so by using this bonus, instead of there being 6 affordables and 54 market rates, we're getting 8 affordables, 6 moderate incomes, and 58 market rates,
Right.
right? And
Where
I think
they,
that's a good,
otherwise the
I think
developer
that's a
could have
good
built
trade-off.
60 market rate.
Right, exactly. Well, no, they could build 54 market rates at 60.
Yes.
If there was 60, right, it would be 54 market rates and 6
Yes.
capital A affordables. And what we're gaining here,
Oh, 60,
from
54, yeah, right.
right, so from 54, it only goes to 58, and we're gaining 8 plus 6. We're gaining 14 units over just 6. I think that's significant. I think that's the beauty of what we're trying to figure out here.
Larry,
Right.
while you're at it, you see how the end of paragraph 2, I've also got the 3. The 3 was repeated there.
Oh,
You have to see, you know what happened to me is my computer died and I got a new one, and I have to use Word when I always used Word Perfect before, and I had a harder time formatting with Word, but I can't figure out how to download the Word Perfect into it. Okay. Okay, is that okay? Everybody thinks that's clear enough?
It seems clear to me.
Okay. All right, then let's move on to the parking. This was the parking issue raised in the county's letter. I don't know what you want to do there. I'm gonna tell you, the parking limits are not particularly high, in this code. I mean, you've got only 1 per unit for the senior housing, where there could very easily be 2 cars. I mean, all of us seniors or approaching seniors have 2 cars. Connie, you probably have 2 cars, right? Yeah, John and I.
We had one for a while.
Too many fights, right?
Well, and
So we are only requiring 1, and then for the multifamily, 1.5, which is probably pretty reasonable. The problem here is there's no place else I don't think you're creating an over parking situation, where you've got too much paving, and as Mark made the point, that the way this is drafted, people are probably encouraged to park on, a developer would be encouraged to create underground parking. There's no places for people to park if they're not parking on site, So I would be a little concerned about working on reducing the parking spaces, but
yeah,
I don't know what you guys think.
I wrote, where would additional cars actually park?
Yeah.
On Main Street? I mean, you can't walk up as a scene. I don't know. You could, but
it's not really a particularly walkable location.
Yeah, I was
Right, it's
At
not.
this point,
at this point.
No, and it's not only because there's not sidewalks, it's because I wouldn't mind walking downtown, but most people wouldn't walk that far to get the train.
I don't even
Yeah.
get though how this is possible exactly. I mean, how does code incentivize extra cost for parking? It's like cost doesn't come into the code, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Are we trying to
Yeah, I don't
enforce
know.
a business
yeah.
model? That's what it seems like. You're enforcing a business model of some sort when it comes to, cost addition or cost reduction in it for parking.
Yeah, I also don't think, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily buy the notion that because you have, say, 2 parking spots, you're going to go buy a car you don't need. Like, it's especially if it's like a garage, wouldn't you just store your junk in there? Like if it's underground parking or something, like, I don't know, like I don't know
I
too many
think a
people.
boilerplate, I think it's probably a boilerplate from the county comment, which is well-meaning, but I just don't think it applies to this particular location.
Right. It might be very different if you were talking about a district downtown, you know, where you have public transportation nearby and stuff, but
Right.
It also seems like this would have to be coupled in with the affordable housing management team, whoever it is at the county. And have they done any thinking about unbundling the cost of parking spaces to make, how does that change the affordability equation?
yeah. Okay, so we'll move on.
So we'll just ignore,
Now,
yeah.
related to that, and Mark, you had raised a question about, do we want to require, electric vehicle charging stations?
Well, I know we
That's a
talked
good
about
idea.
it, and what I suggested was it probably only makes sense for multifamily zones at village-wide. I don't know that it makes sense just for this area, but the notion is as new development or redevelopment occurs, or even upgrades, we really should be doing something to encourage electric vehicles. And
Well,
part of that,
it would also not only residential, but you could say commercial parking, there can be office space there too.
oh yeah, okay, but
So, I mean, if you wanted, I just fooled around with a provision. I just this afternoon, you could have, and I'm not sure it would work. You could add something to, you would the 224-4711. Those are the parking requirement, the different parking requirements. You could add a paragraph there if you wanted to that says something like, in each parking lot or deck containing, you could say, over a certain number of spaces, at least however many of the parking spaces must be provided with an electric vehicle charging station.
Do we know if the stretch code addresses this at all?
I don't know.
I mean, it's conceivable they do. It does.
Yeah.
well, I would like to see, Larry, I'm not discounting that. I'd just like to see something like that in the draft. And then in the meantime, we get a question to Ed about it.
Well, yeah, okay, I'll, how about this? I'll check if it's in the stretch code. And if it's not, I could add something like that. Now, do you want it to be what, in any parking lot or deck? I mean, I suppose any parking lot that's gonna be there, or a parking deck, is gonna be of a decent size, right?
Couldn't it be just scattered around the parking places?
Well,
connect-
I mean, I guess the question is, how many electric vehicle charging stations do you want per how many cars,
10%? Is that high? 5%?
I have no idea.
we have-
I don't either, but there must be some number that's generally used.
I mean, I do think that this is going to be something that changes dramatically in the next 5 years. I almost think that, I think it's a great idea, but I think it's going to become, I think it's going to go from becoming a great idea to a necessity at some point.
Right, but why not just, get it started? I think it's important to get it started because, just like we're trying to control parking in some way by limiting some parking aspects, this is also obviously controlling pollution aspects of the development.
Yeah, but Mark, if you're saying 10%, Mark, that really seems like a lot, doesn't it? If you have 100 parking spaces, you have
I
to have
just threw
10.
it out as a,
Yeah, you know what? I did search the codes in Westchester County, and the only one that had a provision like this, it was just enacted, was Mount Vernon.
and what was their number?
Theirs was for every 175 parking spaces you needed, 2 of them had to be. So it was like 1%, less than 1, a little more than 1%.
I mean, I like, a number like 1 or 2% seems reasonable at this point. Remember that when you put these stations in, they're usually dual headed anyways. So it's not like you're always going to probably be soaking up two spots.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I tend to agree with Brian here. In 5 years, every, is it GM who said every car that they're going to make is going to be electric in 5 years? There's going to be so many electric cars that it's going to go so quickly from 1% as a nice thing to have, or our couple of stations in our parking lot, to you've got to have them everywhere. And there's going to need to be some type of infrastructure package where that comes through. And I don't know how we can really predict that right now. And and to do 2% or 1%, I think it's
If
such
you're
a small number compared to what's
to
going to
reality,
be needed in a short time.
Is there a way to put like a more generic kind of, in the parking section, something about ensuring to meet the need for electric vehicles or something like that, set aside or something? I don't know if there's a generic way to word it. Because I do think whatever we come up with today will be outdated in, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
You mean,
I
Brian,
like that.
the code in elsewhere, not in this zoning, somewhere else?
Or even in just this zone, say something, generic to ensure that you're, keep up with the demand for, I mean, maybe we do it, I wouldn't mind looking at that village-wide either, but, if you're developing parking, ensure that you're, you're meeting demand for electric vehicles. But again, I think it's going to be economically driven, but I think there might be a good way to word something in here that, as Mark says, day one, if something's built in the next 2 years, that they will have, thought about the infrastructure to make sure that they have it, or, at least have the line.
And Brian, here's the thing. I'm not so worried about having to tear up asphalt to put in more charging stations, but I'm really worried about covered garages under these larger buildings,
Yeah.
whatever the residential, you're not.
You might have to
cost
run
of
more,
going,
you might have to run more electricity now, you know what I mean? Like, otherwise it could be a major undertaking.
or going in and, put in the conduits and crap that you're going to use that you need to wire it so that you don't end up having to jackhammer the floor out.
Yeah. So
All right, you know what I'll do? I'll send Ashley an email and just ask her if she's seen any language like that.
yeah, I think there's something that.
And then, and if not, then I'll try to come up with something generic to
Okay.
stick in the parking, but if
Well,
I
maybe-
can,
Maybe it's just something to alert the planning board that it's something that we would like them to consider,
Right.
if it's, I know Brian's saying keeping it kind of generic, yes, but at least it's a signal to the planning board that we're thinking about this issue in terms of these new developments.
Yeah, and if they see that like a plan wouldn't allow that in the future, that's probably pretty nearsighted. It's probably back the same way it was in, 1910 with electricity in general.
okay.
DC, not AC.
All right, I think that was it, unless you guys had any other things you
One
wanted
more.
to talk about on the substance.
Yeah, one
for
more.
law before-
Bike racks.
What?
Sorry, bike racks. The county guy, right?
Yeah, I
mentioned-
know.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I know that some people look askance at this, but pretty soon there is going to be a Route 9 corridor that's been optimized for bikes and pedestrians. And we don't know the shape of it on North Broadway, but it's going to be from Hastings all the way up to Sleepy Hollow and going across the new bridge. So, to talk about another, I don't know what to say, because these.
You know what, it could, if I can come up with some generic language, it can cover the charging stations and bicycle racks.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned. The bike racks can be screwed in anywhere. They're just a couple of bolts into concrete.
Yeah, I know. Well, so do you want it in or not?
What can you come up with?
Well, I don't know. I'm just,
Okay, here's the trade-off. Do
I think the bike, I mean, you're getting pretty specific there. I don't know,
Well, no, I think that could be actually part of the public benefit trade-off discussion at some point.
What, you get you get extra units for putting in a bike rack?
No, but maybe as part of the process of getting this funding for the sidewalk.
I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me it's not such a big deal to just stick a bike rack. I would, I think the residents of the building would say, we want to buy, give us a bike. I don't know.
I was gonna say, I thought it would be, driven by the customers and the developer getting
Yeah.
a handle on what kind of tenants or owners they were expecting, and if it's viewed as, and couldn't people add it easily?
Yeah.
I guess I'm saying, as much as I like that idea and take Mark's point about Route 9, I think maybe it will happen as needed.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm more,
We're getting way too down in the weeds here. I understand
Yeah.
that, but I think we just make it a general
Yeah,
statement.
and to be fair, the county did bring it up, so it's good that we discussed it.
I'm
So
more
Okay.
concerned about the EV than the bike racks
Yeah.
at this point, because I
How
think
about the electric charging bikes?
there you have it.
Yeah, right.
How about the little segways,
what about the scooters? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go on to the secret form?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, we're going. Let me get my other folder.
I could see
Okay,
it.
so what I'm figuring tonight is we can go through and answer. I think you have all the information you need to answer all the questions in the part 2 there. And once we've done that, I'll prepare a final a version of this. And my guess is at the end of it, you're going to be ready for a neg deck, but that'll and the negative declaration will, expand on some of the answers. If you recall, the one I did on the last version, let me see if I have it handy. Oh, yeah. So on the determination of significance, like on there might be the proposed zoning will not have any impact on land, geological features, surface water, groundwater, flooding, whatever. It merely codifies uses. This was what we had before. It merely codifies as uses that already exist or are similar to existing uses in the area rezoned. Any development of the lots in the rezoned area will have to undergo a secret review, at which time these impacts will be discussed. But anyway, that will be all in there. But we've got to go through it now, and so I know what those answers will be. Okay, so then the first one is impact on land. Well, of course, there's going to be impact on land, but we're not going to know until there's a exact proposed development. I guess you could say that about everything, but you can't even project what the impacts on land will be. So I think it would be fair to say on this, that as a result of this zoning, there's not going to be any impact or a small impact. And once there's a proposal, then, this will be considered. People comfortable with that?
I think
Yes, I can. And I
that's-
suppose you could say that about everything, but there's other things we can project, like traffic and stuff like this, but it's
I think that's
impossible.
lar- as you say, I think it's largely true for most of them, but that one in particular, I think is.
Yeah,
You can come up with 20 different scenarios and they're all different.
right. Okay, so then number 2, impact on geological features. Well, there are no geological features, so that's a pretty easy no. The impacts on surface waters, it'll affect wetlands or other surface water bodies. There aren't any on those properties, so that's also clearly a no.
There are no runoff streams on those properties?
What do you mean runoff streams? I don't know that there's runoff from other properties, but I don't think there's any streams. No, I mean, when we did the main one I know is the Carafiello one, which is the steepest. And when that was done for the secret before on it, and more important, the site capacity, you would have to subtract any wetlands or water bodies, and there were none.
Okay.
All right, impact on groundwater. Well, there isn't groundwater, so there won't be any impacts on groundwater. The impact on flooding, these aren't land subject to flooding, so that's pretty clearly a no.
Sorry, just a second. Back to the groundwater. To me, that's one of those maybe. And if these buildings go in with, but it's only based on specific development. If they go in with geothermal heating, then there could be an impact on aquifer or groundwater, right? But we don't know that until such time as specific projects go before the planning board.
But
Yeah,
you
but
look
if you look at the questions underneath this one, what they're looking at, none of it seems relevant. The proposed action may require new water supply wells. No. The water supply demand may exceed safe and sustainable withdrawal capacity rate of the local supply or aquifer. I mean, that's very unlikely.
Yeah,
Well,
the water comes from up north.
May allow or result in residential uses in areas without water and sewer. That's clearly no. May include or require wastewater discharge to groundwater. We don't permit that. Proposed action may result in the construction of water supply wells. No. May require the bulk storage of petroleum or chemical products over groundwater and aquifer. No. May involve the commercial applications of pesticides with 100 feet of, so it's not, those are the kinds of impacts they're looking at, and there's nothing, no matter how it's developed, that's gonna do that. Okay, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. On flooding, this is not in the floodplain. Impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source. And you see all of these things are required, pertain to regulated emissions, which none of those uses are permitted. Okay. Impacts on plants and animals. I think we had indicated that would be no, but Jan Blair raised the question that she thought there might, that possibly could be, some species up in the hills there. And so I asked Ashley from AKRF to take a look. And DEC, I know you guys know, but just in case for the public, the Department of Environmental Conservation has a resource mapper, and she checked that resource mapper, and the only thing that pops up for this site is that it's located in the vicinity of habitat for Atlantic and short-nosed sturgeon due to the proximity of the Hudson River, but neither of these species would be affected. She also checked I don't know, 2 other sites, US FWS and IPAC, and it shows no endangered species on the site. So I think that could be answered no. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Impact on agricultural resources, that's irrelevant, that's a no. Okay, impact on aesthetic resources. And whatever the questions are, I mean, this is something for the board to consider. But you got a lot of renderings of what a full of the worst case build out would be, and what it would look like from Broadway, what it would look like from Strawberry Lane. And I guess the question is, do you think that would be have a, anything other than a smaller or no or small impact. Can't say it would have no impact, whether it be a small impact.
Well, if you look at each question, a few of them are pertinent to this particular thing.
Yeah, and the overall question, whatever the overall question, I mean, you know, yeah. I'm not saying this one's irrelevant. I think this is one you have to think about. I know you got the materials, you know, to take a look at the, I sent them again, Larry sent them again, so that you could take a look at the different renderings. And it's for you to decide.
I thought, correct me, anyone correct me, but I thought part of the goal here was we had such a large buffer on the Broadway side in order to protect the aesthetics of
Right.
how it was being viewed from across the street, like from maybe the White Mansion House or, you know, whatever else. So I thought considering that stuff was part of our goal. Now, obviously the buildings are going to be, any building is going to be more exposed in the wintertime.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, this is what the conclusion we made the last time, and the buildings aren't any bigger now. Is it the impact on aesthetic resources and open space will be positive, since the proposed zoning requires much deeper setbacks from Broadway than are currently required.
I mean, I hate to punt a little bit, but, you know, again, this is one of those things where, you know, the zoning, depending on what gets built there, potentially could have impacts. But, you know, I've gone up and down Strawberry. I mean, to me, the Strawberry Lane is probably the one place that will be impacted. But, you know, again, I've recently traveled Strawberry Lane probably too much. I've become a little bit of a nuisance on their street, because it can be on my way home instead of going up Riverview. But, you know, my opinion on it is, you know, what's there now isn't exactly like a beautiful garden that's going to be ruined. It's kind of a very corporate building, you know. So to me, it's, yes, you can, from some places you can see the historic mansion. But, you know, if you're looking out your kitchen window and not straining your neck, very often you're just kind of looking at a low rise brick, you know, cheap construction building. So, you know, could this potentially? Yeah, I think there could be, you know, some small impacts, but, you know, to me, it's not, you know, getting rid of a beautiful meadow or something. It's, you know, that, especially that piece of property. And when we add in the setbacks, I don't think that the impacts are going to be that large myself.
Marianne, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't the threshold issue or the threshold question on this particular section is that top part, which says that the proposed action, the proposed uses are obviously different or in sharp contrast to the patterns around it. And you're proposing multifamily housing, which, you know, you have multifamily housing directly to the north of this area. And then the rest of it is office, which you already have there. So, I mean, that's kind of the threshold issue. Is it visible? Of course it's visible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you don't even get to those
I've been
questions.
thinking I've definitely been thinking about this one, and I kind of remember the other discussion, you know, this issue of the threshold level and significantly different. I mean, you could certainly think that now it's not, let's see, the situation or activity in which viewers are engaged while viewing the proposed action is, and this is D, routine travel by residents, including travel to and from work. Yeah, so there's certainly some difference. Of course, we don't know the specific, again, like all of them, we don't know a specific project, but it certainly can have, it certainly will have some effect, but is it significant? I don't know. There's another one. I think it's not 9, it's 18, I think, that I was thinking about too, but.
Well, we'll get there. But
Yeah.
you know, the crazy thing about this one is the questions underneath really don't go with the one on the
Right.
top.
Right, well, maybe that's why I was struggling with it.
You only-
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you only
just,
look
you
at
know,
those.
Yeah,
You only
read
look at
one
those
and say,
questions down
"Wait,
below.
I know, but
Yeah.
really, I know, that's what it says. If you answer no, which we could say, yeah, it's not different or in sharp contrast, then you shouldn't even have to look at the other ones. But the other ones really have nothing to do with the top question. You know what I mean?
Well, but they do when when you do it in the context of something that's sharply contrasting from everything else around it. So pick a use that's in sharp contrast. You're building a power plant, okay? And then
Or
with
commercial
that-
center, yeah.
right, or some sort of retail mall or something. And
Oh,
with
yeah,
that in
so it's a
mind,
lot different. And then, yeah.
then you go
okay, I
down
see what
those
you're saying,
questions with
Larry.
that in mind. So that's what
Yeah,
I'm saying. Those
yeah.
questions, although they're interesting to read, they're not applicable unless you consider this to be in sharp contrast, which I think for the time you've been talking about this, I don't think you consider this to be in sharp contrast, but that's up to you.
No, I think the top answer is no.
I
Okay.
agree.
I agree.
Okay. Then the impact on historic and archaeological resources. It occurs in or adjacent to a historic or archaeological resource. It doesn't really, but no.
Well, is across the street adjacent?
Oh, I suppose, yeah, I guess, yeah, that's a good point.
Right, there's Villa Luaro across.
Yeah,
And that's a nationally recognized historic structure.
yeah, that's true. Okay. But I mean, on the historic thing, I think okay, so on that you answer yes, but on the historic thing, I don't think there's impacts. If anything, you're adding protections that aren't there right now. I mean, there are some historic structures there. The mansion a lot of people have come up with, but also the stone buildings on the former Carafiello site. But right now, there is absolutely nothing in the law to prevent somebody coming in and just tearing them down. At least this law provides incentives, pretty significant incentives for developers to keep those buildings up. They don't get counted in their coverage. They don't get counted in their FAR. It's a lot. It means it's free space for them.
So isn't that answer D then? Meaning that the fact that they're actually getting a form of protection, et cetera, as a benefit
Yeah.
is something that's other
Yeah.
impacts.
They're positive impacts.
Exactly.
So when you read number 10 at the top, how do you answer that? The proposed action.
Well, it's across the street from,
Yes,
You can
say
answer
yes.
it yes, you know,
I think you
but,
should
but then this is what I had on the last go round.
yeah. You know what the other
The impact, one second, Connie. The impacts on historic and archaeological resources will also be positive since the proposed zoning grants incentives to preserve significant historic buildings. And then the other thing is, I guess you could add to that. I mean, even though they don't ask, there's a deeper setback required from across Broadway. So there's a deeper setback, I guess you could say, protecting the Villa Luaro.
The one other thing is that Route 9 is the Washington Rochambeau National Historic Trail. It's part of a 9-state national trail designation. But again, you could make the same argument that the setback from it is greater required than it was.
Right. Okay.
I mean, personally, I would have loved it if some of these places were, the mansion on the Maxon property certainly would qualify if that had been applied for, as probably 2 other places in the neighborhood. They haven't been. To me, it's a shame, but if anybody wants to talk about historic preservation in the village under other circumstances, I'm all for it. But I don't see how it fits here. But we'll keep going.
Yeah.
So 10, the answer is yes on top.
It's on yes, but all of the things underneath are no, smaller, either no or small.
except for D.
Well, you have to, yeah, your choice is to do no or small impact or moderate to large. I don't know. Maybe I'll leave it blank and just put other impacts positive.
Okay.
Well, that's what I
The
meant.
form will let me. I mean, it may be that the form doesn't let me, but
Well, you do have, I think it's worthwhile saying that the impacts are positive.
I said that. I am putting that
Where? I'm sorry, at D?
on D and in the findings,
Okay, fine.
under other impacts, and also in the finding, the determination of significance. Okay.
Exactly.
What?
Under E, and then I don't think I understand what that means.
That's only if they're.
No, but it says if
above.
any of the above are answered, moderate to large impact may occur. Continue with the following, but nothing above is going to be answered moderate to large impact. So it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, we have to make sense of everything in this form.
Like your law professor.
Sort of like the question I asked my
Yes,
task
yes, the law
professor.
professor, yes.
My law professor, okay. Impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or reduction of an open space resources as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. And the answer to that is no. Wait, Larry, did we check if this was out? Remember I asked you about whether this was in the open space inventory?
Yeah, I recall that, but I don't know the answer.
Yeah, that came up. And I got the answer. Well, you know what? I'll double check. Sarah sent me the open space inventory, so I'll double check. Maybe it was a different thing I was asking about, but
In any case, it might simply mean that it's a yes, but all the impacts are no.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Okay, impact on CEA. This one is yes, because the whole village is in the Hudson River CEA, but nothing here is going to affect the river. All right, impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change, and I guess we have to answer yes to that. There'll be more traffic. But okay, this again was one that I wrote to AKRF about and asked the traffic person to look at it. And I gave them the maximum number of units that could be built. And oh, come on.
What is the maximum number?
Oh, here's the trip generator. What was the man? Oh, wait, let me see. I don't remember off the top of my head. Wait, hold on. Let me find the memo I sent to Ashley. Larry, you know what the numbers are, don't you?
Well, I'm looking at the memo, but it's 155 is.
Right.
That was the maximum we put, 155. That's assuming everything is built out.
Right. That's
And
what I picked off the floor, 155.
and they did the proposed zoning. That's if it were fully built out, could generate approximately 51 trips during the AM peak, 55 trips during the PM peak, and 59 trips during Saturday peak hours. This is a relatively small number of peak hour trips given the current volumes on North Broadway, which has an annual traffic volume, whatever. It said that it could generate, this is without any changes, a 6.4 increase in the AM and a 5.9% increase in the PM peak hour trips. And their read on it was that it really wouldn't be significant. I also asked them, could you, can it be mitigated? And they said, well, that would depend on, depends on the project, and they couldn't deal with mitigation in the abstract, but they didn't think it was going to be an issue because it's not that many extra trips. So if you think about 51 trips during the hour, there's 51 trips in a whole hour, not at any one point. So 51 trips spread out over an hour. So on this one, I mean, I don't think you could say that it's going to exceed the capacity of the existing road network. There'll be some impact, but it's not going to be big. And then everything else is irrelevant. Anybody have anything to say on it?
So it's a yes, and then it's a small impact on A. Okay.
Yeah, there'll be an increase, but I mean, those kinds of numbers are, first of all, that's assuming that everybody builds out all, as much as they could. And then those are pretty high numbers we gave. The numbers we gave assumed all the bonuses. You comfortable with that? Everybody, okay. Impact on energy. It may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. I guess you don't know until what's built, so that's sort of dependent. It'll have to be evaluated when there's a project, but it's certainly not something that can't be dealt with. You're not talking about huge number like the will require a new or an upgrade to an existing substation, will require the creation or extension of an energy or transmission or supply system, may utilize more than 2,500 megawatt hours per year, may involve heating or cooling of more than 100,000 square feet of building of area. I mean, all those could happen, but but I think it's fair to say that the impacts would be no or small. The developer's going to have to deal with them. Anybody disagree?
I don't know how, 155 units of possible people. I mean, certainly there's going to be more use of energy than what's there now.
Right.
But are we back to the question of, is it significant? This top one says may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy.
And I think that's yes, there will be an increase.
Okay, yeah.
But then I think underneath it's no or small or moderate.
Okay.
I mean, no or small, not small or moderate. Okay. Then the next one, impact on noise, odor, and light. It may result in increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting. And I would say no, because you've got the darks, you've got the provisions on lighting that things can't shine off the property. None of the proposed uses are going to be noisy or have odors or whatever. So I think this is a no.
I mean, more people is more noise, but I mean, you have that many more people, but is it significant than what's there now?
No, and if you look at A, the proposed statute may produce sound above noise levels established by local regulation. That's not going to. It's not like having a convention center where you could have parties, and then it may result in blasting within 1,500 feet of any residence. I think that's a no.
I mean, yeah, okay.
Everybody agree? Okay. It's a no, mainly because of the other regulations, either in this act and in the code. Okay. Impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants. I think that's pretty clearly a no, unless anybody disagrees. Okay. Consistency with the community plans, that the proposed action is not consistent with the adopted use plan. Well, I think it's pretty, as follows the comprehensive plan update. So I think this is, you can pretty easily answer this no.
Why have we spent so much time on it if it doesn't conform?
Yeah.
Good point.
Okay, and then we go to 18, consistency with community character. And here's another one where the general question, the proposed project is inconsistent with existing community character. It's really easy to answer that no, but then when you look at the stuff underneath, it's not. But B, could it create a demand for additional community? I don't think the questions underneath necessarily go with it. So I think it's worth expanding some on this. And so Larry, you can report. Larry wrote to the police chief and the fire chief about those impacts on services, and then I'll tell you what the results of. We also asked. I'm not sure if it asks here about schools. It doesn't. Does it? Yeah, it does.
Yes,
it
it
asks
does.
about schools. And then I asked AKRF about the school impacts, and I'll get to that. But Larry, maybe you want to report on the police and fire.
Sure. So what I posed the question to both the police chief and the fire chief, laying out what the maximum number of units could be, which is the same data that Ashley was using, of course, and asked them if they could identify any potential impacts on their department's ability to continue to provide adequate police or fire protection in the village if the units were built. And then I also said, would you foresee any need for additional equipment or personnel? Both chiefs identified, they attempted to estimate what the impact would be on the number of calls, the call volume. In the case of the police, they estimated about a 1.25 to 2% increase in call volume based upon the increase in number of residents in those maximum number of units, which they did not express any concern about needing more personnel or equipment to respond to that. Fire department was a similar statement back. They tried to estimate their call volume. They expected about 15 additional fire calls per year. Kind of paraphrasing here, of course. They said that there potentially could be a larger increase than 15, and especially in the first year, just because new construction tends to bring out problems in an alarm system and things that need to be fine-tuned. They've seen that over the years, but nothing that they said they couldn't handle. So there were no requests for additional equipment or well, personnel is volunteer, of course, but equipment.
Okay, and then on the impacts on schools, AKRF did an analysis they used 3 different studies. They had one multiplier based on CUPR data. What's CUPR?
Right, it's Rutgers information is basically.
Oh, is that the Rutgers one? Okay, there's a Rutgers study she did that showed that, let's see. That one showed a maximum of 20 additional students, is that right? And then she used a different one that showed 6 additional students and another one that showed 8 additional students. And then, all of which numbers are significantly lower than, if you remember the numbers I came up with, based on how many students there were in the generated from the existing multifamily buildings in Irvington. So you're not talking about a lot of students, a lot of student generation. So that's just, I know a small. Okay.
So I looked at E, proposed action is inconsistent with the predominant architectural scale and character. And, I had to say, what is a predominant architectural scale and character there? There's such a variety, diversity. And again, I'm thinking of the important historic building that's there, but I don't think it in any way it would fit into saying that that's the predominant architectural scale and character. So I argued myself out of this.
Plus our zoning says that it has to be architecturally compatible with the area.
Neighborhood,
Mhm.
yes. I know we have an ARB, right? And there are all kinds of other things. And again, we have a local landmark law, which could be enhanced. So anyway.
And that's the end of it. That's the end of the, so since we answered no or only a small impacts on all of it, I think, you would be prepared to issue a negative declaration, and I'll write that up and write up the part 3. Larry, what was next on your outline for tonight? I think that's all I have.
Yeah.
Resolution.
Yeah, there was.
The tax stuff, right?
No, well, I can touch on the tax stuff since you mentioned it. I don't have data. I know taxes were mentioned in at least one of the pieces of correspondence that you received, expressing the concern that any development here would not generate adequate tax revenues to cover the additional services required. And I think, although I don't have the tax data as I was hoping, I have, asked for information from the assessor at the town of Greenberg. But from a higher level look at it, based upon the generation of school children numbers that you saw, I would venture to guess that that's not a major concern in terms of needing to cover the cost of additional services for those school children. I think these properties would generate ample tax revenues for that. I am going to try to get the data from the town of Greenberg, but that's kind of the initial discussion on it. The other item that I think you had talked about at the last meeting was to really, at the end of this, have the board adopt some sort of a resolution showing its support for affordable housing. We discussed that there's more to supporting affordable housing than just zoning, and so I took the liberty of drafting something that you can take a look at tonight and edit it away and think about it more, whatever, and we'll come up with something that you think you can pass at or around the time that you consider the adoption of the main part of the zoning. I mean, it's kind of just in concert with each other.
Right.
So I'll put that up on the screen if you give me a second.
Yeah, while you're getting it up, Larry, I'll just kind of mention that from all the affordable housing developers I've spoken with, they basically said, they agreed to take a look at our zoning, and they said, yes, that zoning would definitely allow us to do an all affordable project there. What they said, is the bigger issue, obviously having the zoning that allows it is big, but the bigger issue is the willingness of a municipality, which is also semi-synonymous with the community itself, accepting and willing to work with the developers to figure something out, especially in a place like Irvington where land costs are so high. We'd probably have to be creative. We'd have to help them source funding. So I think that, I think our willingness and our public declaration that we would be willing to explore this as an opportunity is equal to, or perhaps even more important than the actual zoning text itself to accomplish that goal. So that's why I do think that this is important. Even if we don't, get every word right in our resolution, I think showing the willingness that, this is not just a priority to us in words, but, we're following that up now with a resolution which would create the potential for, action by the board and a willingness from the community, I think. So that's how I'd frame this as we, kind of debate the wording, which I'm sure we could debate forever, but, I appreciate you putting together a first draft of it as well. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on the actual resolution, but, to me, it's, I think that, as long as it's clear what we're supporting, I don't have to worry about debating every word, and we do have some time to tweak it some more, but obviously happy to get some input from the board tonight.
Well, I also thought, it seems like a good approach to me to have this resolution. I thought about all the yearly priorities. I think it's 11 that Brian and I have been reading every year at the village when we do our priorities. I can't remember a year when we didn't put, greater diversity of housing, affordable housing. It's always in our priorities. It's been a struggle, that's for sure, in terms of numbers, but if anybody wanted to go through all those records, they'd find a long history of support as well as this resolution.
And I did refer to that in the second whereas.
Yeah, but that's, the comprehensive plan, yes.
And the annual goals. So
Make them look at it. Go back and read them.
I still am bothered by accommodative zoning, since it's a very awkward phrase, but
in the age of an accommodative Federal Reserve, I thought it was appropriate. But use whatever word you want.
I never heard the word before. I guess I don't read the financial section.
No, I didn't either. I looked it up and it actually is a word. I thought it was a word.
I guess
Brian hears it all the time.
Are we hawkish or dovish for?
Yeah,
I think we're hawkish, right?
Should we maybe work in there that we have proactively adopted the county's recommended
Model ordinance or whatever.
ordinance for requiring a certain number of affordable housing?
Good.
We could maybe do that, right, either in the same sentence with the comprehensive plan, but making it clear we also have an ordinance on the books.
We'll draft it here, obviously. I'm just making a note.
Yeah.
Okay. If you come up with a different word than accommodative or a different phrase, please let me know. It doesn't have to be tonight, but.
I'm guessing there's no other words in the thesaurus to go with accommodative, but.
I didn't even use a thesaurus this time. That's not usually my repertoire.
I thought it was an invented word.
I actually, this is, I think this is I think this is a great start. I don't know if we want to just kind of all think about it and think if there's other things kind of similar to adding inclusionary zoning reference, like what other things that we might want to put in here, maybe strengthen Connie's, are almost alluding to something about, it's been a goal for at least a decade, and we've, I think we ended up having 6 pledged and they haven't been built because of a bankruptcy. So, almost something alluding to the struggle that we know, although we've been trying, we're still struggling. So we're, very open to trying to do more. I don't know. I don't even know if that's needed to be said. I think this is probably, I think if a developer sees this, that used to be one of the things that developers said was, Irvington doesn't want any kind of development. Well, I think this kind of makes it very clear that we do support, affordable housing for sure.
Larry, what about if you made the one whereas deal with the comprehensive plan, and then the next one be the comprehensive plan, and you could also have the reference to the inclusionary zoning in there, and then just have a separate whereas saying what Connie did. I know it's included in there, but then it stands out. Whereas it's been a goal,
Decade
whatever.
long. Yeah.
Each
Yeah.
year, then maybe if there's a separate second paragraph, a separate paragraph, it'll stand out more.
Right.
My only real comment is that I think it's important that the resolution be passed concomitantly with the zoning. So there's no missing the fact that it was done at the same time and what the purpose of it is.
Yeah, I think that, and then obviously that gives you, this isn't being considered on Monday night, for example, but so it gives you time to edit this.
Right. Well, I think we should look at this, together. And if there is editing that we would want, I think it should be done, over the weekend, so that it can be part of Monday's agenda.
Attached to it, yeah.
I think we can finish this off in the next few days. I think it's a good idea, Larry, to have it on Monday.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll have a new draft for you for Monday's meeting. I'll have it to you by midday. Larry, you need it at noon Friday. I'll get it to you.
Yeah, even 2 o'clock is okay.
Yeah, then and the secret thing, and then because there are some changes in it, it should be renoticed.
Yeah.
For the June meeting. So my advice would be not to pass it before the June meeting. I think there needs to be a new notice before this Monday's meeting.
Right. So the revised law will be attached to the agenda on May 17th. The public hearing is still open. But there'll be a new notice, the legal ad notification put in that the hearing's continuing to June 7th. Right. And on that agenda will also include, and we'll post it on the website, of course, we'll also include the completed EAF parts 1 and 2.
And whatever we can do about the stretch New York, so that 90 days thing that Marianne was talking about, the moratorium could be in effect to show that we have that on the docket officially.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I think I have some ideas on how to do that, but I'll gather my thoughts and let you know.
Well, I will make a motion to adjourn then. That'll be accommodative to the rest of your night.
Well,
Wow, almost in an hour and a half. That's good.
Not bad.
Oh,
Not bad. If
good.
we hadn't said accommodative so many times, we would have been out of here already.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
Good night,
bye,
everyone.
You didn't
everyone.
vote on it,
Not before.
Brian.
What's that?
You didn't vote on it.
Oh, yeah. Anybody want to stay? We still have 3. Aye.
Aye.
I think they voted